Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Shaken Not Heard, the James Bond podcast that nobody listens to. We are your hosts, Elliott Serrano and Dave Pino. How you doing, Dave?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm okay, I guess. I'm not gonna. I shouldn't complain. I could, but I won't.
I think we all could.
It's just this past weekend for folks who are watching us from outside of Chicago. The weather in Chicago has been pretty cold, and it's getting it's getting old. This whole bringing out the old snow blower to clear the driveway and the sidewalks and stuff like that. So it's getting old. I'm ready to move to. I'd move to Florida, but they're crazy down there. I'd move to Arizona, but they've got scorpions. So
Yeah.
where can a guy go? Where can a guy who's tired of cold go? But anyway, good evening, Susan. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And again, Shaken Not Heard is a James Bond fan cast where Dave and I have been going through every James Bond movie, starting with Dr. No, all the way through No Time to Die. And we even took a couple detours along the way. We looked at Never Say Never Again. We also looked at The Rock, going on the conceit that it was a James Bond movie in disguise, but really it's not. It was just it was a fun film with Sean Connery.
Yep.
So yeah. Good evening, Lehman. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for coming on board. For those of you who are watching us on the Facebook page, you're always welcome to comment. Same as on our YouTube and Twitch pages. Whatever format, whatever channel you're watching us on, thank you so much for being with us. So yes, so we did all the movies, and we finished them. And well, I want to preface this, folks, that I have no one to blame but myself for this one. That I told Dave, okay, let me backtrack just a minute or two, or let me say a week or two, because if you were listening to the MCU review last week, Dave and I pretty much had an on-air production meeting about what was Shaken Not Heard going to be about today. And we were supposed to talk about the Bond themes, but the problem with the Bond theme songs was that our guests who were going to come on to talk about the Bond theme songs were otherwise occupied, and we were trying to figure out a way to get our schedules together. It just didn't work. So we said, let's postpone that. Same went for the one about where we wanted to do an episode on the Bond girls. Same thing. The guests that we wanted to have on to talk about that topic couldn't make it. So, like a fool, out of nowhere, I messaged Dave and I said, hey, we did say we were going to review Casino Royale, the David Niven version, right? And I don't know, Dave, I think this is kind of a test of our friendship that you didn't warn me off on this one.
Hey, other people had warned you about this one.
Yes, many people warned me about this one.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. We already have somebody spamming our YouTube page with a stripper link. So hey, if you're joining us on the YouTube, bonus.
That's how we know we've made it.
We've made it. Anywho. So I want to preface again this by saying I should have known better. And I want to sincerely apologize to everyone who messaged me last week and said, oh, you're going to do Casino Royale? How can I watch it? Because I want to watch it too. You guys have got me curious about it. A couple folks did message me saying, how can they see Casino Royale? And I told them I'm watching it on Amazon Prime. And I'm just sorry, folks. I really am. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. That's going to factor into our giveaway at the end of the show. All right. But anyway, so it's giving you an idea of kind of like what the experience of watching Casino Royale 1967 was for me. I am not going to say that I completely. Okay, I don't want to say anymore because I have thoughts and things. Not all of them bad, actually. Not all of them bad. There's some. This movie, I'm going to tell you something, is really interesting. Okay. But to talk about this film, we've got to go back to earlier episodes of Shaken Not Heard and bring back a guest who said that if we talked about this film, he had to be in on it. And even when I asked him at the last possible moment, dude, we're going to talk about Casino Royale, the 1967 version, he said, I'm there. It doesn't matter. I mean, I will probably be just waking up because I have the working overnight shift and this is when I sleep, but I'm there. So taking one for the team, or actually helping the team out and being a good friend in the process. Joining us yet again, he is a reporter, a radio personality, the writer of the Twilight Zone comic, as well as Rotten, Mark Rahner. How you doing, my friend?
Hi, guys. By the way, I don't remember saying any of that about I'd be here anytime for Casino Royale, but I'm glad you're talking about it. Because, pardon me, I wish I had a cocktail. All I have is coffee here. I feel kind of lame. What do you guys got? What do you got to drink?
I got some Scotch whiskey here because I know we drink.
Elliott, what do you got?
I am actually drinking some white rum, some jalapeno infused white rum that I made over the weekend.
Nice.
So it's been.
I won't know how I feel about that until you send me some.
Can you ship? I'll ship it to you if I can figure out a way to do it. It's quite. It's been quite good. It's quite potent.
Well, I'm excited to try it. So I'm gathering you weren't into this movie, which is weird because it's such a glorious, just a big Jackson Pollock splatter of 60s pop culture. I mean, Laugh-In was around the same time, right? And this is sort of like a fusion of Laugh-In and maybe Mad Magazine with Bond. It's mod, it's sexy, it's silly. And let me tell you this, if just the opening credits don't put you in a good mood, then to quote David Lynch, fix your heart or die.
Okay, David Lynch ain't got nothing to talk about because that dude makes some weird shit, okay? And no, you're right. When you watch the opening credits, you have that Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass are doing the theme. If you want to hear it, it's on YouTube, folks. That pretty much tips you off to the tone of the movie overall.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this is before my time, right? But I grew up with it as a lifelong Bond fan, and then writing about Bond numerous times throughout my career. Loved it. I played that record, that Burt Bacharach record, so many times I nearly wore it out. That is really, whether you're a Bond fan or not, it's one of the quintessential albums of that era. If you love that era and all the stuff of the late '60s. So you were talking about. Sorry, I can't shake this cough. I don't have COVID, and you couldn't catch it if I did, because we're going through the series of tubes here. So if you are mainly familiar with the Daniel Craig version of Casino Royale, this ain't that. It's different.
No, it's not.
Still your universe, and it's also not the first, and yet it's still better than No Time to Die by a lot. There was a 1950s TV adaptation, and I don't know if you guys have seen or talked about it yet, but it starred Barry Sullivan as Jimmy Bond, and Peter Lorre was the bad guy, Le Chiffre. And I wouldn't say it's unwatchable, but it's not an easy watch. However, it is short.
Yeah.
Feel free to steer the conversation here. I'm just kind of giving a stream of consciousness. I did go back to it last night, and I want to tell you, as much as I'm interested to hear your poisonous, bilious take on this, I loved it more than I ever did when I watched it last night. You see movies a different way as you age, and you see them at different periods of your life. And I got all the satire that I was too young to get when I saw it as a child. I thought the humor was funnier than I ever thought it was, and a little naughtier than I ever realized it was. But make no mistake, this thing's a mess. It's a kitchen sink. I mean, it had about as many directors as Trump had bankruptcies, and I think it had one fewer than Trump had bankruptcies, and the same as Trump had Vietnam deferments. It had 5 directors, and you can't say that of, well, any movie ever that I'm aware of. But I think Tora had 2 or 3 different directors, but no, this one's kind of in a class by itself. Peter Sellers, huge star at the time, massive star, as big as it got, and by all accounts, just completely nuts. And he quit before the movie was finished. That's how nuts he was. You don't do that. Also, one of the all-time great movie names, Evelyn Tremble, is his character's name. I'm a childless bachelor, but I kind of want to have a boy and name him Evelyn Tremble Rahner. It's a cool name. Now tell me this. Were you able, either of you, to make sense of the plot on your initial viewing?
Dave, I'm going to let you go. You take this one. I'm letting you take that one.
When I watched it last night, it was my second time seeing it. And I had only actually seen it for the first time ever not that long ago, maybe in the last year, if not less than that, more recently than that. It reaches a point, though, towards the end where everything just completely goes off the rails.
Yes.
And
It's insane.
It's impossible to make heads or tails of any of it. But I kept, it does use some elements of like the Ian Fleming Casino Royale story. It's not completely its own thing. I mean, you have Le Chiffre, you have Vesperlin. I mean, sort of. You have Matt, you have the card game and everything. But then there's just all these crazy other things with Bond coming out of retirement at the beginning and all these other agents becoming James Bond. It's something else.
Well, they had to become James Bond to confuse the enemy. So they had multiple James Bond. But here's the thing. You can read a rundown of the plot online, and it involves Bond being coaxed out of retirement because SMERSH, the Russian death to spies organization, is killing agents. So they've got these multiple Bond impersonators, including Peter Sellers. And the reason they recruit him is because he's a Baccarat expert. He wrote a book on the card game, Baccarat. And they want to recruit him to bankrupt Le Chiffre so that Le Chiffre gets killed by Spectre. But just watching through the movie, good luck making sense of any of that. What I thought was kind of the interesting conceit in this is that they start with the heads of these 4 world security agencies paying a visit to the original James Bond, right? In other words, there is a current one using his name and number who's probably a younger, better-looking, wilder guy. Bond Prime, David Niven, also huge star at the time, but really on the way down and aging, but big star. Niven's Bond describes this younger Bond as a sexual acrobat who leaves a trail of dead women like blown roses behind him. What a great line. But they want to maintain his legend.
Yeah.
I've got to say, because I kept having to go back and double check when this movie was released.
67.
This is only 5 years after Dr. No is released. Is it Dr. No's in 62 or 63? 62, right?
62.
So I'm like, holy cow, this movie seems actually somewhat prescient in that it's predicting. Like, this movie, to me, would have made a hell of a lot more sense if it had come out 10 years later when you had all these Bond movies to look back on and them going through, like, let's say, casting a new Bond and a new Bond and a new Bond. Like, it would have felt like they were making a commentary on that.
Well, make no mistake, though. This came out, Bond Mania and Spy Mania were in full swing by the time they were making this movie. Okay, so Dr. No came out in 62. You had From Russia with Love, and then the 2 prime Bond movies, Goldfinger and Thunderball, were already out by then, and the world had been obsessed with James Bond. What year did Thunderball come out? 65, maybe, I think.
Yeah.
They made him faster then by quite a lot. So, I mean, the platonic ideal of Bond is in Goldfinger and Thunderball. So they had this to work with already. Mm-hmm. And then, as we talked about before, You Only Live Twice was when it kind of started to become a self-parody, overblown, just throwing everything at the wall. So I think they had the material to work with, and they didn't have to wait 10 years.
Welcome, PM Paris, to the show for watching PM Paris, who should be credited as the person who came up with the name for this very show. And then Susan brings up the Avengers. Yes, we had John Steed and Emma Peel. The Avengers would come out around that time too. Pardon me.
There were so many spy shows and movies at that time. There was a thriving Euro spy knockoff business. You had the Wild Wild West, Mission Impossible,
Man from Uncle. When was Man from Uncle?
Uncle. I don't know if you knew this, Elliott, but I'm an Uncle fanatic. So if you branch out into that, we're gonna have to talk again.
Hence why I'm asking you. Yes.
Yeah, and all of that came from Bond, and so you could almost make the case that Casino Royale was late to the party, spoofing this stuff, but. I don't know. I think the spoof is pretty good now more than any other time that I watched it. I mean, you start off the movie and these heads of world intelligence go to visit retired Bond. He lives like Michael Jackson. he's got a huge compound with lions roaming all around it. However, no apparent signs of pedophilia. And he don't like I'm the jerk here. Okay, blame the journalist. There's just a lot to love about this. Like I said, Niven, by the way, was a lot more of what Ian Fleming had in mind to play Bond in the first place. He did not have a bruiser like Sean Connery in place, kind of a crude, open mouth chewing brawler like Sean Connery. It was Niven or somebody like Cary Grant that Ian Fleming wanted to be Bond. And he learned to live with and like Connery later on. The women are some of the most beautiful women in all of 60s movies and TV. You've got, well, for one thing, you've got Ursula goddamn Andress right out of Dr. No. Lots of people from other James Bond movies. Dahlia Lavi, who just passed recently. Barbara Boucher, who's still with us. And if these names aren't familiar to you, they pop up in so much other nerd stuff that we love, Star Trek, everything. Joanna Pettit. We got Woody Allen in it.
Yeah, I was going to try to avoid mentioning Mr. Allen, talking about
let's
pedophilia.
Just lean right into it. This is long before he married his own stepdaughter, and he was funny in this. I mean, whatever you think of him now, just watching this movie, I thought he was good in it. He was funny. And he was also kind of an edgy young comedian at the time. And so it was cool to have him in this thing. Orson Welles is Le Chiffre. And apparently they had a lot of trouble during the filming of this. I don't believe Welles got along with Peter Sellers because Welles was brilliant and Peter Sellers was just out of his mind. And so the gambling scene that you mentioned earlier, I don't even think they were in the same room for that at the same time. They just filmed the scenes to the camera individually. John Huston is M. So if we've got anybody watching or listening who's under the age of, say, 50, I don't know, maybe you don't know who John Huston was, but legendary director who kind of dabbled in acting now and then.
And he does direct one of the. He is one of the directors on this film. Yes.
Yeah, he was in this gangbang of directors that they had to get to complete the movie. What else is fun about this is they get huge stars just to show up in little roles. Like William Holden, massive at the time, big leading man movie star. He's in a little role as one of these other intelligence heads. Deborah Carr from great horror film called The Innocents. I guess if I were better prepared, I'd have IMDb up, but wasn't she also in From Here to Eternity? Anyway, huge star, and you get to see her if you've ever seen The Innocents, it's not a wacky, fun movie. It's a really melancholy, beautifully done ghost story. You get to see her just act as silly as you could possibly imagine in this, and it is a hoot. What else?
Peter
O'Toole
shows up
yes.
He shows up and he looks really sweaty, and I didn't realize. There's no doubt in my mind that Peter O'Toole was absolutely loaded to the gills when he filmed his one scene in this, which wouldn't surprise anyone. The soundtrack we mentioned, but in particular, Dusty Springfield sings "The Look of Love" on the soundtrack, and it's one of the all-time great songs. I mean,
it will win an Oscar.
We're going to play that at all our funerals. It's such a classic. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's an Academy Award winning song.
Oh, did it win or was it just nominated?
I think it won.
Okay.
When I was doing my research on this, because I really needed to figure out how this train wreck got made. Okay. and Mark, you're doing exactly what a lot of the cinema these guys who want to just defend the movie, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But I went into researching the actual production of what happened with the film. And the reason that there were 5 different directors is because the directors kept quitting on it. And
it was no Tom Cruise joint.
And
we're talking,
and none of them knew what the other director was doing. None of them. They were just doing their own thing, and then a blessing upon the house of the guy who had to edit this whole thing together and try to come up with a story, because it was out of there. I kept telling myself, okay, this is going to be like an Austin Powers type deal. If you go online, go to like YouTube, Google Casino Royale, you watch it, and if you watch certain clips by themselves, it seems, as you just said, it's a satire of James Bond. They're just poking fun everything they can. The Peter Sellers stuff feels very Austin Powers to me, which makes sense because Mike Myers worshipped Peter Sellers. That's who he modeled himself after. But at least Austin Powers films have kind of like an internal logic and a cohesion. They go from point A to point B, joke, 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 joke. Whereas with this one, it's like, suddenly, like, let's go back to the Peter Sellers bit where Vesper Lynn, we call her Vesper again. For a moment, she's James Bond, but then we call her Vesper. She's been kidnapped out in front of the casino, and they've taken her away, and James Bond goes, "Did you see someone go? She was wearing a dress, da-da-da." Yes, she went off in that really fast car. And out of nowhere, Peter Sellers suddenly finds himself in a Formula One uniform, and he gets in a Lotus, an old, 1960s Lotus race car, makes a joke about how they don't know how fast this car is. Ha-ha! He smiles at the camera. Cut.
It's
Peter
ridiculous.
Sellers back in his tuxedo, tied to a chair, like about to be tortured by the chief. And you're like, what happened? I mean, the change in the tone is so abrupt. And you're there going, oh, all right. Oh, man.
There's no way to make rational, linear sense of this movie. It's insane and surreal and wacky. Like, picture it like a 60s Laugh-In episode where they go from one nutty sketch or scenario or exchange to another. And it's just like they put everything in a jar and shook it up and just threw it on the table.
You're right.
Yeah.
It felt like a lot of that was improvised. A lot of that stuff that Peter Sellers did was all improvised. Then at one point the directors are like, "We don't care. We're just going to do whatever we want." And Peter Sellers says, "I'm going to do whatever I want." And it was essentially, let's try to put this together in a great big stew. But unfortunately, not for me at least, not all the ingredients really went together. I will say though, there are some stuff, as weird as it was. Susan Reed brings up "It's a Mad, Mad World." I remember A Mad, Mad World.
That's a good comparison.
Good comparison. Probably Mad, Mad World had more of a story though. You could like bing, 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 bing. But anyway.
Well, it's easy to get sidetracked with Casino Royale because, like, in the middle of the movie, first of all, Sellers doesn't go up until about 45, 46 minutes into it. Mm-hmm. And it's the result of a side mission. Bond recruits his daughter that he had with Mata Hari to go recruit Evelyn Tremble. And then, for another half hour, there's no Bond in the movie. Well, the real Bond. There's all the other Bond.
And I will say, see, that was like some of that whole bit with the daughter of Bond and Mata Hari, which, holy crap, that is like putting that into the lore of James Bond, which it doesn't count. But if someone had said, yes, like Bond had met Mata Hari during his service in like World War II or World War I, whatever, that would have been, wow, he would have had a daughter, and the daughter of the two greatest spies in history, right? That whole sequence with her going back to the school that her mother started, like to teach new spies, was so surreal. We're talking even beyond David Lynch surreal. The sets are askew. Everything's built weird. The logic in, it felt like a dream. It felt like dream logic. At that point, I actually started appreciating that.
The sets are beautiful, and they put some money into that movie too. Like, look at Smersh headquarters, where these 3 or 4 women in costume are in the middle of a big round map, and then they've got like roads with model cars going around it. The sets are beautiful. Or like, if you really are determined to be a sourpuss about the movie, the scene where we first meet Mata Bond, and it's a big, big musical number in a beautiful, expensive-looking set. Out of nowhere, a musical number in a James Bond movie, whether it's a spoof or not, it's just crazy, and I loved it.
That's where I went, oh, this is another Spielberg lift from the Bond movies, because he loves Bond so much. He did something similar to that in the beginning of Temple of Doom.
Anything goes,
the Anything Goes sequence. And they're going, this feels like anything goes. Well, he was doing Busby Berkeley, but still. Anyway,
well,
you're right.
If you're a big nerd genre fan, you want to get straight to the action and the killing. And so I think it would have been easy for like young Mark to be impatient with the musical scene, or current Elliott to be impatient with it. But I just appreciate it's like, did you see the Zatoichi movie that Takeshi Kitano did? Well, it's a fairly somber, serious, violent movie. And at the end of all of it, after he's killed pretty much everyone, there's a great big group dance musical scene. And I can't recommend it enough. It seems insane, but as soon as you've watched it, you want to watch it again.
I was okay. I wanted funny. I wanted something funny. I wanted there to be some jokes. I wanted there, because I've watched Monty Python. Monty Python makes me laugh. I said on my Facebook page, this movie is like one of those bad SNL skits where it thinks that just keep the joke going, just let the skit keep running longer, it'll get funny again as it goes. I kept waiting for a truly funny thing to happen, but maybe it's just too damn dry for my sensibility.
And that's the thing.
It's over 2 hours.
Yeah,
it really outpaces welcome.
Bond movies at the time, they were usually, I think, up until Thunderball, they were hovering like just under 2 hours, an hour and 50 minutes. And it feels every minute of it's 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Halfway, I almost bailed on this movie. Halfway through, I was watching him, and I was looking at the clock. I kept hitting the timer thing, going, "This has only been an hour," and I'm looking at what's left. I'm like, "Oh my god, how much more do I have to endure?" And at one point, the movie starts picking up steam, and some of the narratives, I started getting involved in some of it and some of the jokes, but then it goes off the rails again, And then I'm like, I'm trying. Mark, trust me. I went in hoping to have fun with this movie and have a laugh. I kept waiting for the laugh.
I thought of the two of us, you were the kind of more easygoing one, and I was the miserable bastard. What happened to us?
Well, first you got a haircut, okay?
Well,
the last time we saw you were looking like you were holed up in a bunker. Okay.
Well, I was living like Anne Frank. We were in the middle of a pandemic. I hadn't been outside. Been living like a cross between Anne Frank and an astronaut. I hadn't been outside in a couple of years, and it's kind of getting back to that right now.
And then, in all that, things, dude. The world's been rough out there, man. It's tough.
It has, and this is a good little 2 hour and 11-minute antidote to that. I thought I paid a lot more attention to the dialogue this time around, and I thought Some of the cracks and innuendos were very funny, but you got to listen to them. There's a lot going on. There's a lot visually coming at you, and the plot makes no sense, so you're kind of disoriented. The dialogue is very funny and very wry and witty. Some of David Niven's lines, I should have written some down, because me just telling you that they're funny doesn't really convey it, does it?
Well, I mean, in the very beginning, like the American intelligence agent, I'm CIA from the CDC, CC, and all that. I thought, oh, that's funny. They're poking fun at, the Americans and how we love our, acronyms all the time. I thought that was kind of funny. But explain to me why in the beginning you had that Scottish, the Scottish lordess, or whatever what you call them, that they all want to seduce James Bond, because when he's celibate, I guess he's too formidable.
So they're trying to weaken him.
Yeah, you got to weaken him by getting him in bed, or get him to break his celibacy. Fine.
Yeah, so that's Deborah Carr, and I guess she's M's widow. Is that right?
Yes, but then she's like speaking in this heavy Scottish brogue. But then the moment when she actually falls in love with Bond, because he's playing that game with the giant, cement, balls, she breaks out into French for no reason. She starts talking, and they're subtitling it and everything. I'm like, what is going on here?
It's just wacky. It's insane. There's one line that I do remember while they're trying to break Bond's will in the castle of M's widow, and he is coaxed into a bubble bath by an actress. I believe it's one of the actresses who shows up later in On Her Majesty's Secret Service and seduces George Lazenby. And they're both sitting naked in the bathtub, and Bond asks the girl, "What form are you in?" Meaning, what grade in school are you in? And she kind of looks down at herself and says, "Can't you tell?" I mean, come on.
That would have broken me, though. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Oh, no question about it. I
will say this, though. You're right, though. These are some of those beautiful women you'll see in a Bond film. If we're going to call this one a Bond film, you have to, because it was. But the women in this film are just gorgeous, and this. I mean, so many. I mean, I can never now criticize. I can never criticize any other Bond film for tokenizing women, because this one just went overboard with the tokenization. They're literally parading them around like props.
It was a different time. Yeah, you don't get to make this same movie again. They weren't going to bring in the woman from Sleazebag or whatever it was to make the dialogue more female friendly.
I want to go back just a little bit, because Thomas asked early on, when did Get Smart come out? Get Smart was in 1965.
Yeah.
So that would be when you'd have Mel Brooks giving his take on the whole spy bit.
Buck Henry.
But see, that was funny. I remember watching Get Smart as a kid and thinking, and Mel Brooks in itself is somewhat of sophisticated type of humor.
Come on. You think Get Smart's funny, and I love Get Smart, but you don't think Casino Royale is funny? The whole shtick of Get Smart was taking a small handful of jokes and running them into the ground over and over again in the same episode and the same series. How many times does he say, "Sorry about that, Chief," cones of silence, all stuff that I love. But as funny as I think that Get Smart is, and I've just loved it ever since I was a little boy, I don't think it's any less funny than Casino Royale.
The difference between Casino Royale and Get Smart is, yes, Get Smart runs the jokes into the ground, but at least it has jokes. Where were the jokes in Casino Royale? There was one joke when in the very beginning, when we see Peter Sellers in the very beginning, and he's approached by a contact saying, "Oh, you're James Bond." He goes, "Yeah, show me your credentials." And the guy, they're behind like this wall, so you can't see what's happening, but it looks like Bond's contact is flashing him. And Sellers goes, "Okay, good credentials. All right." I was like, "Oh, see, I get that. That's funny." But it's also Peter Sellers.
You have a very thick dossier, sir.
Yeah. I will admit that I do have a bit of a bias for Peter Sellers. I loved Peter Sellers, all the Pink Panther movies, anything he ever did. He was effortlessly funny for me.
What is your position on Peter Sellers' movie, The Party?
Oh, I love that movie. It's one of my favorite comedies of all time.
We're all going to get canceled.
Another one that can never be made today. You get a little bit of that in this, though. There's this scene where he's at the card table and he's doing his various ethnic impressions.
Yeah.
He's doing the different voices. It's like, oh, yeah, that's problematic. But I'll admit, I was laughing. I was because
he was great at doing it. I don't even argue that.
Because he's a freaking chameleon. He can do anything. He can play any character. There's that one scene where he was in all these different outfits. He comes out dressed as Hitler at one point.
Yes, he does.
James Bond dresses as Hitler.
Yes.
No way. This is that you're like you guys said. That no way does that happen in modern cinema.
No,
Mark,
no.
Movie Murder by Death.
I haven't seen that. Is that Peter Falk?
Yeah, and Peter Sellers is in that too.
No, I haven't seen that yet.
That's a Blake Edwards movie, right? Isn't that a Blake Edwards movie?
I think it may have been, yeah. And he did have to see the Pink Panther movies as well.
Dave, I'm going to give this to you. Give me if you can give us an answer here, because he goes, Niven said something about trying not to stutter at the beginning. I could not get the joke. If this was a reference to the original Bond in some way, that was that was hitting me too. I'm going, why does he keep stuttering as Bond in the beginning? And go, I don't remember them ever referencing that in the books that Bond had a stutter. I was researching. Did David Niven have a stutter? No. Apparently he was doing it as a joke in the beginning or whatever. And then he even makes a comment like halfway through. Did I stammer just then? And he says it's a money penny. And Moneypenny says no. He goes, yeah, I'm not. That's not going to happen anymore. Like he pretty much says, we're getting rid of that. We're tossing that joke and we're moving on to something else. I wasn't sure if there was any sort of meta Bond reference that we were missing.
No, that's not a reference to the books or anything. Like he doesn't have a stutter in the books. So,
but none of the characters, nobody anywhere in there somewhere.
No, I think it's just something David Niven came up with on the set. Yeah.
Okay, I get it. He was really good at it because at one point I'm going, is he? It sounded like he was legit stuttering, like he kept stuttering his lines. I'm like, oh, I want to give David Niven props for having the courage to keep going through this train wreck of a movie, even though the script is so bad he's stuttering.
He could have been president. He could have been. But they address it in that scene that you're talking about when he's going back to not his office, M's office, because M's killed and he's taking over MI6, although they call it MI5 in the movie. I think the way they explain it in the movie is that when he gets back to work, he loses his stutter because he's just back in his groove. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Makes sense. And I'm sorry, Moneypenny? Oh my goodness. That was another great joke though. He walks in and I kept thinking are they referencing that they keep recasting Moneypenny, or that would have felt like it. But he goes, "Oh, hello Moneypenny. You look great." He goes, "That was my mom." You know, it was like Moneypenny's daughter was the one who took over in the office and Bond doesn't even realize it. So
they kind of do that joke in Octopussy. When there's which obviously wouldn't be for like another, 15 or so years after this, but Bond comes into the office and it's Miss Penelope Smallbone, who's supposed to be like Moneypenny's protege, or but he only sees her from behind. And oh, you look younger than you have in years. Moneypenny. Oh, that's my protege, Miss Smallbone. I'm over here, and he turns. Oh, of course you are. It's classic Roger Moore. So that felt the introduction, the first time he sees her, and this reminded me of that scene.
But again, I will give Casino Royale, 1967. There were so many concepts that were being thrown around in this movie. There were like 3 different movies in this one movie. They could.
There's as many movies as there were directors.
Yes, and I'm sorry. And you're talking about Jimmy Bond, which was James Bond's nephew, not his son, his nephew. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, wasn't James Bond Jr. supposed to be his nephew in the cartoon series?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So like, look
I've
at
never
this.
seen those. What have you guys seen these?
Unfortunately, yeah.
What kind of viewing is this?
Was that?
What kind of viewing is this? Is it something you view like in the cold light of day or at night in a legal marijuana state?
Are you aware of that series, James Bond Jr.?
I've never seen it, but I'm aware of it.
Okay, yeah. I've only seen a couple episodes. It was one of the few Bond things you could enjoy if you could actually enjoy it in that lull between License to Kill and GoldenEye in the 90s. That they felt like they would authorize a animated series aimed at kids about James Bond's nephew.
Okay.
I don't think it really helped anyone get through that 6-year period.
It got kids through. It got the kids who didn't realize what they were missing. It's
Yes,
like
James Bond, notoriously a children's character in fiction.
Yeah,
dude, it was like it's like James Bond. It's like Saved by the Bell meets G.I. Joe. throw in Bond characters.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
There's nothing kids love more than an unrepentant killer who's a constant sociopathic womanizer. That's good for kids.
Oh, good. Yeah, you'll find a couple episodes on YouTube. So, and if I can find some, I'll link them on the Facebook page for folks who really want to go down that bit.
You had mentioned, Elliott, the mess of getting this movie made, and we talked about all the directors. Did you look at how many writers were involved in this thing? My God.
Yes. Yep. See, that was again back to the bit about the production of it. I will give some credit to the folks who had to take all these disparate pieces of film and all these different plot lines that just aren't, because again, none of the directors were working off the same script. Every director was doing their own thing. They didn't know what the other director was doing. They didn't care what the other director was doing. They said, I'm doing my thing, and this is what's going to happen, and we're going to throw it all together. Then that editor had to go in and figure out a way to boom, 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 make it work. So I'm there going, if anything works, none of it was intentional. It's all pure luck. It's
That's
like, again, an editor probably drinking just like me right now, going, what the what? You know what? Let's just do the big ending where the Indians jump out of an airplane, and let's throw that in at the end. Oh, how are we going to make that work? Oh yeah, we need to put in a shot of of guys on horseback. See, they're the cavalry coming to the rescue. Yeah. It was like the end. It was like the end of Magnolia. You ever see that movie, P.T. Anderson's Magnolia, where the setup is brilliant. The setup to this movie is brilliant about all these different stories that will at one point cross each other and one will relate to the other. And in the prologue, he tells these different short stories that demonstrate or are supposed to foreshadow what the whole movie is going to be about. The problem is when you finally get to the big blowout of Magnolia to see what actually causes everything to cross, I go, it makes no fucking sense. Frogs raining. You know what? I don't know what we're going to do. Let's just make frogs rain from the sky. That's it. We're just going to drop frogs from the sky. We're not going to explain how it happens. We're just going to drop them. We're just going to do it. And that's what it felt like with this movie. They're like, you know what? Let's just do whatever. Let's just go nuts. Yes. Lehman says Orson Welles did get to do his floating lady in magic, so they're like, yeah, we've already had Orson Welles do a magic trick in the middle of the Baccarat tournament. Let's have the roulette wheel, fly into the air, and become a death machine.
Yes. Why wouldn't you? That's my question. Why wouldn't you? So I think you guys could do a whole extra show on different versions of Bond films that were written and got pretty far into production even and never got made. Some of the writers on this, we're never going to see what they wrote because not a lot of it turned up in the finished product. Like the director Billy Wilder took a crack at the screenplay for this. Joseph Heller, the author of Catch-22, took a crack at this. Ben Hecht, the writer. I mean, this kind of makes me want to do like a deep forensic analysis of all the different versions of this, but I don't know even where to start looking to get them. But we're lucky enough to be living in a time when all this stuff is coming out. There was a long road to getting this thing made. There was a long road to getting Bond on the screen at all. And so I even found out, which this was totally new to me as of yesterday, Michael Garrison, the creator of the Wild Wild West, was developing this at some point, and then it didn't work out. I mean, that's quite a pedigree.
And this is, of course, the rights to Casino Royale were bought before the Bond films became big. So,
otherwise, I've said this before, the Casino Royale would have made sense as the first Bond movie, just because, like, we talked about how Dr. No was done on like a shoestring budget. This one they probably could have done even more so, because the majority of the movie, I mean, if hewing close to the Fleming novel, majority is indoors. It's in casinos. It's in a casino. It's in hotel rooms. So you wouldn't have to have some big, enormous budget for traveling the world and location shooting. So that would have been, I think, a logical choice as the first official Bond movie. But they didn't get those rights till 40 so years later.
This movie looks like it had a bigger budget than Dr. No.
I don't know what the budgets were, but there's no question about that. Dr. No, I mean, Bond was an unknown quantity at the time, and kind of an edgy thing with an edgy story with a hero that really, I don't think they could count on Bond in 1962 to have a lot of mainstream appeal, because let's face it, he was kind of a prick. I mean, that's not a hero that American audiences were really used to, like white hat cowboy lovers of the time. And so he was the naughty boy. He was the naughty boy that you don't want your daughter to go out with. And I think people were surprised that it was as big a hit as it was, let alone just a worldwide phenomenon like that.
Apparently, this one had a budget of $12 million. Dr. No was $1 million.
Holy crap, $12 million?
Yeah.
$12 million, $1967.
That is huge.
Yeah.
That is ridiculously huge.
Yeah.
What would that be?
Are you sure it's not like adjusted for inflation or something? Because that really seems kind of a bit much for a movie in 1967. Because then that would explain, because at one point I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking, this is the most self-indulgent film I've ever seen. This is
absolutely.
Yes. It's like they're saying, we've got this movie, we've got these people, we're gonna do whatever the fuck we want. There's nobody telling us not to do it. We're just gonna do it. We're just gonna run. Let's just keep doing the joke over and over again. Just do whatever you want. Let's go on and on and on. There's nobody back at the ranch telling us these dailies make no sense or whatever, although I'm sure that would come later.
That would be, I just checked, it would be over $100 million in 2020.
In today's money, yeah. That's
at least, yeah.
That's a lot of money. Even more than $1 million in those days. $1 million for a film in 1962 is that's a lot of money. That it really.
I think you can see all that money up on the screen, not only in the sets that we talked about already, but there are some scenes that require like a whole set, and they look fairly expensive, and they're on screen for like 5 seconds, and they do this a handful of time. I don't know if you noticed this with just this flurry of stuff whirring past you, but they really threw a lot of money at stuff without regard for like, well, why don't we use this in 2 scenes? This set that must have cost us a small fortune. There's at least a couple like that where you think it must have taken them, I don't know, a couple weeks to build that set, paint it, get those costumes made, and this is for like one super fleeting joke, and you never see it again. I think they just threw money around like drunken sailors on that film.
It looks like it. No, the Mata Hari scene, the Mata Hari scenes alone, that set. Again, just for the set production alone, if you want to watch this film to get a sense of what they were able to do in the time, and mind you, I'm accustomed to. Okay, when did Cecil B. DeMille? When is he doing his big budget biblical films like Ten Commandments and you know, because those were known for having really big, elaborate sets too. I'm trying to remember when that was.
If only one of us had access to some futuristic device to find information easily.
I mean, 1956 is when the Ten Commandments was done. So it's not like having a big, a gorgeous set for people to run around on, give it atmosphere. It's not unheard of. You're absolutely right, Mark. Okay, they did the scene once where Marta is what we're calling her at that point, right? Bond's daughter.
Marta Bond.
Okay. Oh, wait. Here's a scene that made me laugh. Here's a scene that was like so freaking clever. I actually started laughing and going, "Holy crap! That is something." When she stumbles upon the auction for all the world leaders trying to get blackmail material. Now they're all bidding on blackmail material, and then they show the picture of some, you know, military leaders with hookers and all, and they're all bidding against each other for it. I'm going, oh, okay, that is way beyond anything I expected in a comedy right now. So like that was smart.
They really throw everything at the wall in that. There's every kind of joke. I mean, it's not like a one-tone type of movie like Dumb and Dumber, where you know what you're going to get in the first 10 minutes for the rest of the film. They try everything in this movie. Some of it works, some of it doesn't, and it's kind of like a comedy Rorschach, which you failed, Elliott. You.
I said I thought that scene was funny, but there's so much. Again, the movie teetered between brilliance and ludicrous with me, back and forth.
I mean, I'll give you this. I'm never going to say that it's a good film. I mean, if the Criterion Collection ever gets around to doing an edition of this, I think they're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of fine world cinema. But in terms of like a late 60s pop culture icon, and, you know, also, there's been so many Bond movies made. If you're going to make a comedy out of one, this works for me as a comedy. I don't want to see a Bond comedy. I want to see straight, action-packed, kind of more or less serious Bond with a little bit of humor, but no comedy in it. Like those first six. The first six are all I really need in my Bond library. But if you got to have one, there's no way not to have a little bit of a good time with this. And you said that, you know, the ending, it's a long haul. Elliott, you almost bailed. But by the time you get to that ending, that crazy cowboy and Indian flying saucer exploding shit ending, I'm not exaggerating. It feels like a massive release. You've been through 2 hours and kaboom. And then at the end of it, you're done. You need a cigarette. That's it.
No, I did not have any post-nut clarity after this thing, buddy. That did not occur. I was that relief. I was like, the fuck? Yes.
I shudder to think of what really turns you on, Elliott.
There's a scene where out of nowhere, a flying saucer lands, and a bunch of the horses go onto the flying saucer, and it flies off, and all this stuff. I was like, I'm sorry, but this movie did end up predicting the end of Bond. It gave us No Time to Die, essentially. Because what happens at the end of this Casino Royale? Every Bond is killed. They all die, and everyone except one goes to heaven.
Yeah. Not only are they all killed at the end of the movie, everybody's killed, but they give it away in the opening credits.
Yes, they're playing the harps and all that. Yes,
you can see the angelic characters in the opening credits. You don't know what it means in the opening credits, but it's more of a giveaway than the beginning of Mission Impossible. So good on them for that.
You know, it's funny. The more and more I'm talking to you about this, I'm actually getting more of an appreciation for the film. I know. I was like, man, that editor did such a great job. I want to. I think
don't you want to see all the stuff they didn't use? There must be a mountain of unused.
There's got to be, yeah. Or they used everything they could. They're going on. We're going to use every. We spent so much money on this movie. Ain't nothing getting left on the cutting room floor.
Well, they were scrambling after Peter Sellers walked out. I mean, he literally just walked out and didn't come back. So what do you do on what would you say, a $12 million movie in 1967 where your goddamn lead actor walks out before the movie's finished? Good Lord.
He just handed the ball back to David Niven at that point.
I guess.
There are 3 Bond movies in this movie. I could sit down and dissect the different plot points in this film and come up with 3 different Bond pitches just from this movie alone. I mean, I'd have to take out, the ludicrous humor, but there are 3 real plots in this film that you could make legit Bond movies for. First, of course, there is the regular Casino Royale, the bit of the money, the bankrupting Le Chiffre to foil Smersh. 1. There's the daughter of Bond and Mata Hari. You could, Bond meets his daughter, and we learn about the school she went to. That's total like Black Widow Red Room stuff. So fine. That character alone you could do a bunch with. And then of course you have the plot with the compromat, as we would learn from the Michael Steele dossier during the 2016 election. Discovering that all this blackmail material is out there, and there's this big auction house for it that different world leaders are vying for. So they're boom, boom, boom. 3 different plots right there. 3 different movies you could make just using this movie as a template or as a base.
And if they made this movie today and Disney owned everything like it does today, I guarantee you all of those would have their own series on Disney Plus. You'd have a Mata Bond series, and you'd have an episode where she goes off to spy horror school. And, all of them. You'd have a Jimmy Bond series, and you'd fill it all out just like the Book of Boba Fett and all the other stuff they're doing.
That would become the James Bond Jr. version 2. Live action James Bond Jr. And Odd Job shows up again wearing his bowler and hammer pants like he did in the cartoon.
Now that you mention Odd Job, I just remember there's another tough guy, wordless villain actor in this that I remember. I think he shows up in The Spy Who Loved Me, and he's one of the big muscular shirtless guys who opens the door at Mata Bond's palace. I believe he shows up in The Spy Who Loved Me as somebody who gets in a fight with Roger Moore, and Moore shoves him or drops him off the side of a building when he's holding on to Moore's tie. I think that's the same guy. I didn't know how interested anybody watching would be in just running down the minutia of every single person in here and their pedigree and their Bond film lineages. But there's a lot of inbreeding going on in here with other Bond movies and other nerd stuff that we all love. Like Alexandra Bastido is one of the girls, and she winds up being one of the leads in the spy series The Champions. She's one of the women who's taking care of David Niven in M's castle, I guess it is. And good Lord, she's beautiful. But then again, you could say that about all the women in the whole movie.
Yeah.
This movie's done at Pinewood Studios, just like all the other Bond films were. So, but then everything in London is done at Pinewood. So, yeah.
We have a scene with Frankenstein's monster, played by David Prowse, aka Darth Vader.
Where is he in this again?
He Frankenstein. He just shows up. He just walks through at the end, and okay. Bond asks him, "Excuse me, do you know where we need to find the office? Do you know where the office is?" Just walks into the door. Thank you. That felt very Monty Python to me at that point. When it turns into a complete farce at the end, everything felt very Monty Python-ish. And I was like, well, maybe if this movie had more of that, I would have been, I don't know, I would have been pulled in more. But there are times when this movie takes itself kind of seriously, and I was like, oh, okay, you're pulling me out by trying to play things straight here. Playing it straight.
I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, and in some cases when they played it straight, it was kind of working. But then the tone, the shifts in tone, just were always so abrupt from one scene, from one cut to the next, or even within the same sequence. It just kept going back and forth, back and forth. I was like, I don't know. I have no footing here. I don't know what I should be feeling with this film.
Okay, Elliott, I'm going to tell you something that's going to unlock this like a key for you, and I'm going to try and hypnotize you through the screen here. I want you to think of James Bond like Batman. There are so many different versions of Batman, and you can like them all, and they can coexist, and you can have your favorites and the ones that you return to, and you love Adam West Batman, and you love Christian Bale Batman. I didn't come to this conclusion until later in life, in my later years now, in my 80s. I think I mentioned earlier that I just like the 6 or first ones because you could never say they played it straight, but it was just more like boys' action adventure that weren't flat out silly comedies. Later on, I loosened up. I realized, good Lord, I love Roger Moore. Those movies are a little too silly for me, and they're not my favorite Bonds, but they're still pretty entertaining and fun. I think there's something to be had in any iteration of Bond, and Casino Royale has several iterations of Bond in one movie.
It's every iteration of Bond.
Yeah, so think of Casino Royale like a big goddamn Batman movie that has Adam West, Christian Bale, Ben Affleck, and just poop jokes and every other thing you can think of in terms of attempts at humor, or like the Spider-Man movie, No Way Home, that has all 3 of the Spider-Man in it, but was a legitimately good movie. Does that help you at all?
It does. In a way, it does. And you actually, it's funny you should say that. Warren Ellis did that very thing in his Batman Planetary crossover, Night on Earth, where the planetary team meet Batman in Gotham, and there's this sort of like temporal shift going on. So Jaquita Wagner, the gun, the
yes,
heavy,
yes.
she meets every iteration of Batman, from the Adam West type to the Dark Knight type, and it's hilarious the way they do it. But there is a logic to it. My issue, and maybe you're right, Mark. I mean, I was looking for logic. I was looking for some sort of, at least give me like a bell to tell me, okay, we're changing tones here. This is what's going to happen here. This is why we're doing this. This is why that's happening.
Right.
I kept thinking to myself, why are they doing this? They're building to something. They're doing something here, and I'm going to get a big payoff at the end where it's all going to make sense. And that never happens. Because why? Because there never was. It's like religion, okay? Everyone wants to take all the books of the Bible and insist they make sense and that they all complement one another, and that God wrote the Bible and it's a perfect book, when this movie is just like the Bible. Like a whole ton of people worked on it. They all worked on a story that, when you try to look at it as a whole, makes no sense to it. And you just pull from it what you like, you pull from it what you can, and you go from there. And that's the way I guess I'm going to look at this film.
I think what you're really saying is that the Bible is the Casino Royale of religious texts, and I appreciate that.
That sucker's going on the Criterion edition. Casino Royale. It's the Bible of religious texts.
There you go. There you go.
No, of the Bond religion. There you go.
There you go.
And Lehman, thank you very much for bringing that up. And James, it's the James Bond multiverse in one movie.
Attaboy. There you go.
We've gotten so accustomed to this idea of there being multiple versions of the same character. I'm just cool with it. I was okay with it. I just needed some sort of. No, they did put the mechanism in there for it too, though. Everyone's named James Bond because as you said, I'm going to confuse the enemy. We also confuse the audience. So
it's the wrong time to be sick of that.
Multiverse is you have the first 5 guys were technically playing the same, so you could really only do like the pre-Daniel Craig Bond meeting the Daniel Craig Bond, and then whoever the next iterate, because obviously the next version has to be a different timeline. So it wouldn't be like 6. Well, 2 of the 6 are dead now, so it wouldn't really work anyway. But you couldn't really have 6 Bonds on screen together and have it make sense. But it would be fun.
Deep fakes, like they're doing with the deep fake stuff and all that, they're bringing back everybody.
Yeah,
you can be done. Okay, who's still alive? We have Brosnan, we have Timothy Dalton.
Lazenby's still alive, just barely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Lazenby's getting up there. I mean, the dude's not holding up.
He's looking craggy. But I'll tell you, if they ever perfect the deepfake thing, what I would like is for them to put Lazenby in Diamonds Are Forever, because Diamonds is easily one of the worst James Bond movies. And I can't think of any dumber move in human history than Lazenby quitting Bond before he finished the first one. That would satisfy me.
Yeah. I want to see his Bond strangling Blofeld to death.
Yes, exactly. And going to bed with Tiffany Case and killing Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd. Absolutely.
It's funny you should bring that up too, because I'm saying, when stepping aside from the current, but looking at the future, I was like, if they want to restart the Bond franchise again, they should start with On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Just, boom, use that one as your.
Don't remake that. Don't remake. And I got to tell you, all the callbacks to On Her Majesty's Secret Service they had in No Time to Die, all it did was remind me of the much better movie and take me out of the one I was watching. How could you improve on that? What would you do if you remade that?
Are you talking about remake On Her Majesty's Secret Service?
Yeah. I mean, they kind of did with No Time to Die.
Okay. All right.
I mean, if we're just talking,
or just use the title. Just use the title. I think the title would work, and then just do something else.
How about a title? How about the title for Queen and Country? Kind of evokes same idea.
That's a comic book series already.
Isn't that a line out of You Only Live Twice? Isn't that why he went to bed with one of the female villains in there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Queen and Country is a spy comic book series written by Greg Rucka, and it's referencing a British spy television series.
Okay,
so great title, but you'd have yet another comic book writer pissed that mass media is kind of taking over one of their.
I mean, if we're just talking about stuff we'd like to see, sorry, go ahead.
Title. It's kind of a common phrase.
It is. No, it is.
It is.
Just like
Queen and Country. You did it for the crown. Wouldn't you like to see like a low budget, somebody like like an Amazon or an HBO series of just Casino Royale through all 14 books, Man with the Golden Gun, on the small screen, because now they've perfected this in such a way, and the stuff that's streaming now is as good as most theatrical films. I would like them to start with the first book, go through all of them. Just like I think they're making a TV series on cable out of all the Anne Rice books. I'm not a fan of those, but it's a cool thing they're getting to do that. Think of how happy the Anne Rice nerds are. Think of how happy the Bond nerds would be if we could just see them, not in all these overblown kind of silly versions that didn't have a ton to do with the books, but like straight adaptions of all the books in a row chronologically.
Yeah. Set in the 50s and the early 60s.
Yes, absolutely. You have to, because that's where they make sense. That's why some of this stuff seems so silly today, because, I mean, Fleming was dead by the time this stuff became super popular. I mean, this Mad Men era stuff, it doesn't age real well in 2022, but in the time that it took place, you can excuse all of that in its context.
Yeah.
They're doing that now with the Jack Reacher books. They have that new series Reacher on Amazon, which I started watching. I'm actually enjoying. I have not read any of the Jack Reacher books, but everyone
I watched the whole thing. I'm through the whole thing already, and the Jack Reacher series is for people who think Tom Clancy is too intellectual.
Tom,
it's really good though.
No, I like well, yeah, the Jack Reacher is Batman and the Punisher, and some ex-military dude.
He's
Um,
absolutely a superhero with all the tropes and cliches of any superhero.
yeah,
It's a good,
but
that series is crack though. I got through all 8 episodes of that in 3 days.
the Clancy stuff, I love the Clancy stuff, but it gets too bogged down with the technology. That's the great thing that I like about Bond, is that Bond is able to balance the spy and the technology stuff. The Le Carré is all spy stuff. It's all spy, realistic spy. Bond is hyper realism, kind of goofy with the gadgets. Tom Clancy is all gadgets with little analytics thrown in there. Which is why the second season of Jack Ryan on Amazon, not as good as the first. First season of Jack Ryan is pretty good. I was not crazy about the second season.
I kind of enjoyed them, but those kind of action adventure TV shows are like crack to me. I'm going to watch them even if they're not the best thing on earth. And the thing about the Bond books, they were meant to be pulpy, like sophisticated pulps with product placement in them. And Ian Fleming himself was a little embarrassed of him. I believe, if I'm remembering this right, his wife was plenty embarrassed of him. I mean, they were beneath his station in life.
It's not the only thing he wrote. He did write other things, which I don't think people know. Like
he's a newspaper man.
Yeah.
So the Bond things were really thought at the time to be slumming for a man like him, as sophisticated and accomplished he was. His wife wanted nothing to do with it and didn't want him writing them.
No.
But isn't it funny though how things that are kind of borderline trash in previous generations become like these revered artifacts now, the sacred texts they are now?
It's funny. I poured my heart and soul into my run on Army of Darkness, and I'm proud of it. I love it. I point at it and I look at it, but I will always be known as the Grumpy Cat guy. You wrote Grumpy Cat.
I can relate to Army of Darkness. We both had a crack at that one. And
no,
it's
you did.
A lot of fun.
For folks who aren't aware, Mark did the Army of Darkness Reanimator crossover. I remember that one. That one was a lot of fun.
I did that, and as well as an Army of Darkness Vampirella series.
Yep.
But it's just, as you will tell anybody, it's so much fun to write in Ash's voice. I mean, once you get into that groove, it's all you want to do.
My problem was I had to be careful because there were times I'd be writing the script. I'm like, Ash sounds too much like Peter Parker right now. I need to like pull out that he's quippy, but not that quippy. And you can only get him to say groovy so many times or repeating the same lines over and over again before it gets to be a bit much. I will say though, I am most proudest of being able to get Ash to blow off the head of a Deadite and say, "Yeah, it's me. I'm the good guy with a gun." In my political satire issue.
There's always room for that. I think, if you're going to pull out those catchphrases of Ash, you gotta be careful and you gotta make them count when you finally do use them, but generally avoid them. My God, have we gotten away from the topic here?
Yeah, really. I do want to ask Dave this though, because we talked about this last week when it came to Incredible Hulk. Did your wife watch Casino Royale with you?
Not this most recent time. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. She watched it up to a point, and then the last maybe half hour, 20 minutes, she walked out of the room.
She bailed.
It really goes off the rails.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of off the rails from the beginning, but when it really goes off the rails in like the last 20 minutes or so.
I'm going to submit this. And folks, if you're not following Dave on social media, follow him on Instagram. Again, Pinto_noir. Where this past week, Dave posted what is probably the funniest picture I will ever see. Caught me out of nowhere. Gave me a laugh like you wouldn't believe. It's his dog, his little adorable gremlin dog, who I love. I love your dog, Dave. And it was dog shaming, essentially, where your little dog is looking up at you, and you have the sign that says, "My mom and dad were trying to get intimate, so I spoiled the mood by crapping on the floor." and I'm going to say, it wasn't that you were getting intimate. It's that you were making this dog watch this movie. That's why he crapped on the floor.
Yeah, you might be. I never made that connection. You might be right about that.
So unkind.
Anyway, and for folks who've been keeping score, I have just polished off this entire bottle of rum right now. It's all gone.
Good work.
Only the jalapenos left.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. Anyway.
Oh, you mentioned how the movie kind of predicted the end of No Time to Die with all of the James Bonds dying. There are some other parallels, probably not intentionally, but between this movie and that one. Starts with Bond being retired.
Mm-hmm.
He has a daughter in the movie. Although in this one, it's an adult, whereas No Time to Die, it's a little girl. There is a female 007 in both films.
Mm-hmm.
And the villain, who winds up being the main villain in both films, their main plot sort of involves biological warfare. And then Bond dies at the end.
Like I said, there are so many. You can pull out another Bond story from this. You could do a story about when Bond ends up becoming in charge of MI6.
Yeah.
They call him out of retirement to look over, like to train. Remember, we talked about this with a Never Say Never Again. Remember the beginning of Never Say Never Again? Sean Connery as Bond says, "Yeah, I'd like to be out in the field again, but you've got me training. You've got me, in the class. You've got me training right there. That's another a Bond story. Bond training the next generation."
Bond is never an authority figure who would be in charge of MI6. Bond is a loner and a rebel and somebody who goes out on his own and does things that are secret, whether it's killing people or having sex with a preposterous number of women. He is not anybody who you would ever want to take orders from or who would want to give them.
Yeah, I know, right. And Luke Skywalker was always the idealist who would never see the Jedi Order fall, and yet they turned him into a grumpy old man who was totally broken by the system. So
you're gonna play that card?
Yeah. I'm just saying, you can do it. You can do it. It can be like the Bond is like he's the head. But he does it begrudgingly. Oh, we heard all these stories about you when you were an agent. How dare you try to tell me to go by the book when it was well known that while you were an agent, you used to flaunt authority and blah blah. See, the drama's there, my friend. It's all there.
It just doesn't make sense with the character though, because the way James Bond lives, the way he lives, is because he doesn't expect to be alive. The reason that his bank account is always nearly empty and he has tastes that his superiors frown on, because how dare a civil servant know the vintage of that port or drive a car like that, is he wants to live, and like the old Frank Sinatra song, he wants to live until he dies. And I don't see a guy like that aging into becoming an authority figure.
Yeah.
We already learned in Die Another Day that Bond can be broke, but he's got credit anywhere he goes.
We have mooted the idea of a former Bond actor coming back to play M. They would never do that, but like a gruff old Timothy Dalton or Pierce Brosnan as M, that would be cool.
That would be awesome. No, that would be having Timothy Dalton come back as M would be pretty brilliant. Pretty brilliant.
He's had a great post-Bond career, unlike some people who have played Bond.
All I know is that Pierce Brosnan, for all the shade that he gets, he's out there living his best life, and he's doing his thing. So
I like Pierce Brosnan. I didn't like him as James Bond. Like you could say about Dalton that he was a good Bond in bad Bond movies. Brosnan was a bad Bond in bad Bond movies.
Okay, I'm gonna. Mark. Bye, Mark. Bye. It was so nice. I'm banishing you back to the darkness from which you came.
What have I violated here? What orthodoxy have I violated? You want to defend that?
I've got man love for Pierce Brosnan as Bond. So
how?
I love. No, I thought GoldenEye's his best one. Yes, the other movies, bad scripts, bad villains, but still, Pierce Brosnan brought the fun to be. You could tell the dude was having fun playing Bond, and I was in for it.
Keep defending the indefensible. I don't understand this.
I love how you're now trying to say that when you've been defending this movie all night and telling me that I need to unlock some shit up here.
I think that if you accept Casino Royale for what it is in the context, that maybe you won't hate it as bad as you did. But
listen to your own words, my friend. Listen to your own words. You convict thyself.
Well, let me put it this way.
The Spirit convicts you.
I'm sure both of you guys have seen the 3 J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies.
Yeah.
Correct?
No, well, 2 are J.J. Abrams. The last one is written by Simon Pegg. He didn't. J.J. Abrams.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I hate those movies because I love Star Trek. I hate the Pierce Brosnan James Bond movies because I love James Bond. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. Yeah, you're one of those. I know.
Also,
we finally found someone who's harsher on Pierce Brosnan than I am.
You want Bond to be. I mean, you don't think you could kick the ass of most of the guys who have played Bond. You couldn't kick Sean Connery's ass. Probably not Daniel Craig, but you could definitely kick Pierce Brosnan's ass.
And no, I'm sorry, but as much as I love Roger Moore, you could definitely kick Roger Moore's ass.
Roger Moore was no pushover. There was he got in a fight with Lee Marvin on Shout at the Devil and rung his fucking bell, man.
Ooh, yeah, Dave, you're not nearly as harsh on Pierce Brosnan as your buddy Mike is. Who
nobody's as harsh, not even Mark.
Yeah. So. Anyway,
I don't want Bond to be nothing more than a male model, and that's all Pierce Brosnan was to me.
Excuse me, that was literally George Lazenby.
But look at what he did. Look at what he did with it.
Mark,
he ran with it. I'm telling you, he rose to the occasion. Let
that paint dry. You've painted yourself into the corner. Let it dry so that you can walk out. Okay.
I'm good with it. I'm good. I will defend George Lazenby to the death. I think George Lazenby is the second best James Bond after Connery. What do you think of that? Wow.
That's a hot take.
Yeah, it's a really hot take. I'm gonna give George Lazenby credit again after seeing what he went through to make that movie. Although I am really more a fan of George Lazenby, the actor, than I am of George Lazenby, the Bond, because for folks who haven't seen it, look at the documentary he did, or it wasn't really a documentary, it was like a dramatic reenactment of things. It's very funny. It's him telling the story, and there's a lot of footage of him kind of like life after Bond when he was doing the press junkets in a full beard, looking like friggin' George Harrison. Doing it because the Bond producers are telling him you got to be clean cut and shaven whenever you do an appearance. And he's like, screw that. I'm just showing up as myself. And I've got mad respect for him for that, for all of that. Thinking, okay, that's a badass dude. Yeah.
At the time, he thought Bond was no longer cool because that movie came out in 68, I guess, and people looked like the Beatles or wanted to at the time. People didn't want to look like James Bond with brill creamed short hair. They wanted all the free love, man. And Lazenby was around people exerting a pretty bad influence on him. Think how cool it could have been if he had made another handful of Bond movies, even a couple more. I mean, I learned to love later on Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun, especially with Christopher Lee. But boy, just in all your nerd fantasy wish fulfillment, imagine more movies with George Lazenby in prime shape, because prior to Daniel Craig, he was also easily the most physical of the Bonds. He was a tough dude.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. We're saying anyone who is signed to play Bond next, instead of forcing them to do like the 5, 6, 7 picture deal, ask them to do 3, do a trilogy, or like do 2 with an option for a 3rd. And then if you're all loving it and everyone's getting along, you can do maybe a 4th or a 5th, but at least 3. So that way you don't fall into the Lazenby trap or the Dalton trap, where I believe you give Dalton one more movie, and I would have been way more sold on him as Bond. But
it wasn't that he didn't get a 3rd. He could have been. I said it wasn't Dalton's fault.
No, it wasn't his fault. True, yeah. But I'm just saying you want to. Yeah, that was an outstanding circumstance in his case. He would have done the 3rd. He was happy to do the 3rd. The timing just wasn't there.
Yeah.
But just again,
they got to make them faster. They got to crank them out faster than every 3 or 4 or 5 years. Look at how fast they made the Sean Connery ones, and look at how slow the Daniel Craig ones have been.
But that's also, I mean, let's be honest. You can do that, but if you want a good movie production these days, you're looking at some of the quickest films production. You have Spielberg. Spielberg will give you 3 to 4 months. Primary of what do they call it when they're shooting? The
pre-production?
The term is escaping me.
Principal
when they're actually shooting the movie.
Principal photography.
Principal photography. Yeah. Spielberg he does it all the time. Like whenever he talks about the Indiana Jones movies, he's got 3-4 months tops of principal photography. Then he's done, and then everything is post-production. And Spielberg, you give him a solid script and the time, he can crank out a movie a year and a half, like that.
Look at Clint Eastwood for that sake. Look at how fast Clint Eastwood makes movies. Make these things back to back. Plan them out ahead of time.
But Eastwood is I will give Eastwood credit for this. But Eastwood, he either has people who he knows and he trusts do his scripts for him, or he just writes the freaking movie himself. Or if he needs to, he will rewrite right there on the set to do what he needs to do. And he doesn't
let anybody do a second take.
Well, yeah. But that's Eastwood. He's got an economy of it. So, but then that lends to a varying quality. We've talked about this before. Would you have wanted, like, let's say 8 Daniel Craig movies where 4 were great, but 4 were crap?
Well, since the only good one turned out to be Casino Royale, I don't even know how to answer that question. He turned out to be a massive disappointment, Mr. Pouty Boy Bond.
The paint hasn't dried yet, Mark. Just sit there. Let the paint
there's
dry.
some things we're never going to agree on, but I know that you love me, and so that I'm okay with whatever you say. But I was so excited after Casino, the Daniel Craig Casino Royale, for what his run was going to be and what it wound up becoming. I can think of few greater disappointments in our nerd realms that we love.
Ouch.
Ouch, indeed. That's fine.
If you love Bond, you have strong feelings about all this stuff.
And you're right. And but the thing too, Mark, is this is my thing to throw. I am getting so fed up with people bitching about Book of Boba Fett right now. As someone who loves Star Wars, I am getting so tired of Star Wars fandom. On either side of things. Just, oh God, shut up. Just watch the show. Or if you don't like it, don't watch the show. Just shut up.
And you're more into Star Wars than I am, and I get that. I also get that the last 2 episodes that have featured The Mandalorian and no Boba Fett at all have been the best of the series so far.
People are loving it, yes. But it's gone. Now it's gone on to Luke Skywalker appears in the last episode, and they had an actor play Luke, and they deep faked him with Mark Hamill's face to do some bits. And now it's turned into, how can people love deep fake Luke more than they loved Mark Hamill in The Last Jedi? Oh God, shut up. I'm so tired of people bringing up The Last Jedi again. God, it's like The Last Jedi is the No Time to Die of Star Wars movies. Where
I accept that. The judges accept that. In the clear. Yes, absolutely.
It's like so divided Bond fandom. It's so divided. There's some. I liked No Time to Die. I actually enjoyed it. I mean, I was cool with it. I was cool with what happened in Bond in this film. I mean, was it a perfect film? No. Skyfall is still the best one to me. And even Skyfall in itself, I don't want to retread stuff that we've talked about in previous episodes. So, folks, if you want to know what we really thought about Skyfall, go to the archives here on the Facebook page, here on the YouTube page, find our Skyfall episode. You'll know what we felt. But
I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah, but Skyfall is not nearly as divisive as No Time to Die has turned out to be. And No Time to Die is like The Last Jedi. Do you have folks? It's turned into freaking religion.
Well, people are passionate about this stuff. People take it too far sometimes, though. That is definitely true.
Anyway, but yes, Mark, I still love you, and you can say whatever you want, and you'll always be welcome in my house, and you'll always be welcome on my show, and I'll always respect you, even though there are days when you make absolutely no sense to me.
I knew there was a but coming. There's always a but coming with you, Elliott.
With you, it's a Jennifer Lopez, too. It's a big but.
I'll take a Pam Grier. Hello. Yeah, well, be careful what you offer, because I'm going to move into your house.
I could use a roommate. It's very, very quiet around here.
Well, I know that we're running long, but sometime, even offline, you're going to have to tell me how you could possibly defend Skyfall. I won't make you do it right now, but if you can defend a movie that takes absolutely all the mystique out of a character who is defined by his mystique, can't wait to hear it.
When they did that to Wolverine with the Logan miniseries, at that point, all bets were off. It's like it doesn't really matter anymore, because we don't want to know. No characters can have mystique anymore. We have to have origins. We have to have everything filled out for us.
Skyfall was the Bond equivalent of that terrible Solo movie, where they take every reference made about him in the first 3 Star Wars films and then fill them out in the most rote and unimaginative ways to generate a product. Good God.
I can't disagree with you on that. I really can't. I was like, yeah, you're right. It's fan service. That's
Elliott, I thought you liked Solo.
I liked it, but no, Mark has a point. It's very fan servicey. Yeah. It's like everything they kept. It's like, okay, now we're going to learn why Han shoots first. Now we're going to learn about the Kessel Run. Now we're like, do we need to know the answer to all those questions? Can anything just be kept kind of like as a backstory that we just make up ourselves? Right? Isn't that one of the thing about the thing about having a character with mystique to it? And this is a big problem that a lot of folks are having, like with Book of Boba Fett. Is that Boba Fett showed up for 15 minutes total in all 3 freaking Star Wars movies. You had to make up his backstory in your own head. Or everything they did as a bounty hunter, you made it up in your own head. Now that they're actually giving you his character and fleshing it out, and it's the canon, folks are like, no, this isn't the guy I imagined. You're taking away all the things that I thought made him cool. You know, you're doing
what
this.
You could imagine was much cooler than what you wind up seeing.
Exactly. So there's so much of that you have to wait, that you bring of yourself, your own imagination. Those characters, if they resonate enough with you, where they're not just ciphers, there's something we can all agree they're really cool, but we all bring something cool to them and who they are. That's what makes them successful. In some cases, it's great.
You don't need to know that much about Bond. I mean, the most you know about Bond from the books, including the obituary that M writes for him when he thinks Bond is dead, is that Bond served under M in World War II, and I believe the Battle of the Bulge, because he says it's in the Ardennes forest, and that he was orphaned, and just a few really, really skeletal details beyond that. I don't want to know all of Bond's growing up trauma and his half-brother and the mother fixation he got with a female M. I don't want any of that. I want I want somebody who's got some mystery to him and is a little bit dangerous, and who doesn't give me their full goddamn psychological workup.
Just like I don't want a whole fucking series about Bruce Wayne's butler. Okay.
You say that, but that's a really good show. You know what? Before I saw the show, I thought exactly what you say right now.
Oh!
But that show has got some swagger and some style, and it is a very, very fun show. I was against everything about it in principle, but when I saw it, it won me over immediately. Have you seen the show?
Lehman, Susan, I hope you all are seeing how Mark constantly contradicts himself.
Have you seen the show? Don't you dare cross-examine me. Did you watch it, Pennyworth?
Strike, Your Honor. Can I move to strike that from the record?
It's a good show, and I was every bit as against it as you are. The actor's good. It's a lot of fun in a thing that I never thought needed to exist.
It's still, yes, I agree with that last part. It doesn't need to exist. Dave, before we go, any closing thoughts on this movie that I obviously feel very strongly about? You've been watching. Mark and I have this going back and forth on.
No, I think I pretty much, you guys, well, especially Elliott. I'm more on the Elliott side of not as being forgiving about it. See, I think it's like, I think about like the two unofficial James Bond movies, this one and then Never Say Never Again, and I'm also a big Peter Sellers fan. I grew up watching Pink Panther movies, The Party, Doctor Strangelove. You know, a huge fan of his humor and him as a comedian, as an actor. I feel like this is a movie I had grown up watching as a little kid. I would be much more forgiving towards it, because there are some funny. I disagree, Elliott, that there's no humor in it. It's funny at times. There are some clever lines in the movie.
There are quips here and there, yes.
Yeah.
But I kept waiting for a cohesive joke. I kept waiting for a big scene to give me something that really paid off. But yes, go on.
But it's, you know, when you see it, when you have expectations of what a Bond movie and what comprises a Bond movie, and then you see this and it's just so off the rails. It's hard to accept it for what it is. Like Never Say Never Again. Okay, it doesn't have the James Bond theme. It doesn't have the gun barrel sequence at the beginning. But for all intents and purposes, it is a James Bond movie. I mean, it's basically a beat-for-beat remake of Thunderball, so it has that. But it follows the structure and the formula of a Bond movie, whereas this, you have that little kernel of the Fleming Casino Royale plot, and then all this other insanity that just sort of shoots out in every direction surrounding it. But yeah, I guess my main point is if I had grown up watching this, because I'm a fan of Peter Sellers' humor and a lot of those 60s comedies, I probably would be a little bit more forgiving of it. And there are a lot of actors in this who I would have loved to have seen in roles in serious, legitimate Bond movies. Like Orson Welles would have been a great Bond villain at some point. I was thinking, like, if they had done a serious, well, more faithful than when we got version of Moonraker in the 60s.
Hugo Drax.
He would have been a great Drax. And my mind just immediately jumped to that because he's playing Le Chiffre. The way he plays Le Chiffre in this reminded me of the Drax of the novel. So I thought, he would have been a perfect fit for Drax. David Niven could have been in a Bond movie. Even Peter Sellers was a great dramatic actor. He could have had like imagine him and Roger Moore like playing off each other in like a mid the late 70s Bond movie. That would have been great.
The closest they came was Roger Moore starring with Peter Sellers' wife, Britt Eklund, in Man with the Golden Gun.
Correct, yeah.
I'm going to post this on the Shaken Not Heard Instagram. So if you go to our Instagram page, sorry, Dave, to cover you up there. Shaken Not Heard. Peter Sellers, beside Hoagie Carmichael, who was the inspiration for the look of Bond in Ian Fleming's own head. He references the singer Hoagie Carmichael. I've got a picture of Hoagie Carmichael next to Peter Sellers. You're going to be astounded at how much they look alike. That
Yes.
Peter Sellers might not have acted like Bond, but in the mind of Ian Fleming, he looked like Bond.
Yeah. Well, I was reading that during one of the issues Peter Sellers had during the production is he wanted the movie to be serious. He didn't want it to be a comedy, which, you know, he was on the wrong set, I guess. But yeah, I could see him playing a serious. I mean, it's hard to visualize him as James Bond, but like a more serious type character than what he plays in this.
He was taking those love scenes pretty seriously. I mean, when he's like, you know, making out with Miss Goodthighs.
Well,
Yeah.
wouldn't you?
Oh, she was pretty. Oh, yeah. But the one thing that did I was amused is how they would be like making out a la any Bond movie, but then they'd cut, and then suddenly the actor and the actress have switched positions. Like suddenly she's on top and he's on the bottom, and then boom, they keep going back and forth. Like whoever was on set dealing with continuity, either they stopped caring, or they just, you know, or there was no one on set handling continuity.
Happens all the time in real life. 1 minute you're on bottom, the next you're on top. Also, who knew that Peter Sellers was such a gorilla with no clothes on? He is a hairy man.
Another Mike Myers bit. Yes, that's the whole bit from Austin Powers. The fact that
Good
Austin
Lord.
Powers. Yeah.
Get that man some depilatory.
Yeah. And we're still getting spammed on our YouTube page for the I guess it's porn. I don't know.
Why don't you click and find out?
I know. No. No.
Mark, since we're talking about the unofficial Bond movies, I wanted to quickly ask, do you have any thoughts about Never Say Never Again?
Oh, it's terrible. Not only is it terrible, but Sean Connery is aging terribly in it. Like, as bad as he looks in Diamonds Are Forever, and he looks bad in that. He wasn't that old when he made Never Say Never. Or do you have access? He was in his mid-50s, maybe, in Never Say Never?
He's 41 in Diamonds Are Forever. And that was 12 years
That's a
later.
hard 41.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So he was Scottish. What do you expect?
I remember standing in line to see Never Say Never Again, and I was so excited about it because I think, if I'm remembering this right, and you're sitting in front of stuff where you can correct me, didn't it come out right at the same time as Octopussy?
I think they're a couple months apart, but yeah, it was the same. Yeah.
And like I said, back at the time, I just thought the Roger Moore movies were just too silly for me, and I was so excited about this. I love Sean Connery, toupee and all. And it starts off with a great kind of action scene. I don't really think of Bond as a commando so much as I do just a ruthless spy. But the opening scene of the training exercise, that was some great James Bond. But then by the time you get into him like playing a video game against the bad guy, it went to pieces. I think it went to pieces worse than Casino Royale. It was a real waste. And you know, I think it's Kevin McClory who had the rights to Thunderball and had been trying to get something made of that for years and years, and it was in litigation endlessly. And so it was cool to finally see something happen and get on screen after all of that. And the end result, I don't know. Were you as disappointed by it as I was?
I know Elliott wasn't.
We have an episode. If you want to know how I feel about Never Say Never Again, I'm just gonna say it like this, and I know, Mark, I don't know how you're gonna take this, and I hope this doesn't affect our friendship.
I like
Never Say Never Again more than Thunderball. I thought the ending of Never Say Never Again made more sense to me than Thunderball. In fact, and Dave showed me this, and I've gone online. You take the Bond, you put in a Bond opening, you put in the John Barry Bond theme, people are going to say Never Say Never Again is one of the best Bond movies. Irvin Kershner great director, did stuff that I was like, wow, this is probably one of the better shot Bond films I've ever seen. But man, what is it missing? Oh yes, it's missing the Bond theme, the Bond music. There's so much in just the score that you don't appreciate until it's gone.
That's
a lot to take in.
Mark, there's a fan edit called "Never Say McClory Again," where they swap out the really questionable Michael Legrand score from the actual film with cues from various John Barry cues from like the 60s and 70s Bond films, and they add the opening gun barrel, and they repurpose the Thunderball opening with the nude women swimming and shooting spear guns, but they put the actual credits for Never Say Never Again over it, and it does improve the movie. It doesn't. I go as far as Elliott say it makes it one of the best Bond movies ever.
No, I'm saying the best. I'm saying it's better than Thunderball. Because I'm sorry, that scene with Bond in that black tuxedo on the motorcycle with the black motorcycle helmet, that was just badass. That was just total badass. And the kinky sex scene that they're having in the boat.
Yeah.
I mean, that was bringing Bond into Bond arrived in the 80s, my friend.
The only good thing to say about the kinky sex scene in the boat is that's Valerie Leon, the Hammer actress from Blood on the Mummy's Tomb. And that woman is a goddess, but
no, she was.
You can say that Never Say Never Again is as good as like one of the like prime quintessential platonic ideal James Bond movies. Yeah. I want you to get the help you need. I'm not even angry with you. I want to help you.
The ending of Thunderball is so long and boring. At least you have a cool shootout in an underground temple in Never Say Never Again, which is kind of fun, kind of cool, more Bondish. Not Bond struggling with fighting some guys with over a steering wheel as the thing keeps swerving towards and away, towards and away, towards and away the reef. Come on.
Well, I mean, if you put it like that, I see your point. No boss fight is ever made better by the presence of a steering wheel, for Christ's sake, is it?
Anyway,
look, Emilio Largo was not the most impressive villain of all time, but he was a Spectre operative. He was a Spectre higher up, and he had henchmen, and it was a fight of one guy against three guys, and Bond wins, and the giant what is it, a hydrofoil? What kind of boat is it? Whatever it is, it blows up. They have sex after it blows up. What do you want? It's James Bond.
I wanted one person at one of those Spectre meetings to go, "We're stealing a warhead again? Didn't we just do that? Can we come up with something different this time? Every time we steal a warhead, something just happens." Can I be the one person that's proposed like chemical warfare?
Admittedly,
that's bad.
That was the first time they did that,
right?
And it's
I'm just saying,
you're at the height of the Cold War, and the Cuban Missile Crisis has just happened. What do you want?
I want my villains to stop inviting James Bond over for tea before they decide they want to kill him.
Well, in Moonraker, the villain asks him if he wants a cucumber sandwich, for God's sakes. That's a long tradition of kind of what's the word? Gentility.
Look, have you ever had a cucumber? Have a good cucumber sandwich, my friend. Have a good one.
I no. I've had
Gary, my friend Gary from high school, my best friend from high school, says Never Say Never is better than Thunderball, but also a kick in the crotch is better than a stick in the eye. That doesn't mean I want either. It's hard to argue with that.
You know, you can call all the bots you want to onto me, and I'm not going to change my position.
No, legit. Gary is my best friend from high school. He's my best friend. Gary, thanks for watching. I'm surprised that he's actually watching right now. All right.
Nobody wanted Never Say Never Again to succeed more than me, and that's why I was so disappointed. Young Kim Basinger, though, two points right there.
Yeah. No, there was a bit much, though, with all that. All right, let's bring this puppy home. Does anybody have any closing thoughts on Casino Royale 1967? Dave.
I voiced my closing thoughts.
The defense rests on this one, or you have no defense. Mark?
I'm just so happy to see the two of you. I've barely been outside in 2 years.
But you were out to get a haircut, which is, I was wondering if you'd have a haircut by this point.
Well, I started working back in an office again, and I couldn't look like Tarzan anymore when I went in. But I've been inside so much. I'm just happy to see two people who are alive and can respond to me.
Likewise, it was good to see you. Tell us, where can people see you, hear you, read more about you?
Right now, I'm doing news on KFI AM 640 in Los Angeles. Pardon me if this sounds gross to you, but it's my understanding that it's the top news talk station in the United States and the top station on the iHeart app. I just do news, so I don't do much in the way of opinion. But when I work on the weekends, Mo Kelly does a show, and I'm often brought into the conversation to have talks just like we're having right now. We talked about Jack Reacher over the weekend and a bunch of stuff. So you can find me there. You can go to Mark Rahner, RAHNER.com and see examples of my comic book work. Haven't done a comic in a couple of years. The industry is in kind of a weird place right now. I don't know about you, Elliott, but I don't know what's going to happen with comics, to tell you the truth. But I have a couple things that I'm kind of chipping away at while I am in a job that pays the bills.
Same here. Same here. I would love to do comics again, but the comic industry is kind of weird. Stuff going on. And that's like even the really successful folks. Our good mutual friend John Layman right now is struggling. We're talking about an Eisner Award-winning comic book writer who is putting out some incredible work and struggling to get noticed in the market. We're talking about after having one of the top-selling and award-winning books. You know, it's just weird. It's just weird out there. So, yeah, I'd love to do some more stuff. We'll see what time tells. I want to manifest in the universe, manifest out there. I still want to work on Star Wars, and I would love to do an Indiana Jones. So those are I will die happy if I can do one of them.
Wow. Okay.
PM Paris, real quick. I want to mention her again, who is responsible for the name of this show. I just found out about my father's ancestry, that I descend from a Bond, a Knight Sir George Bond, which also makes me related to Jane Austen. So I am, in fact, a Bond. Haha. Well, I am. That is so cool.
Cool.
A Bond actually helped name this show.
There's your pedigree.
There we go. Dave, tell us, where can we see you, find you, see pictures of your wonderful dog?
I am on Instagram at Pinto_noir. If you want to see photos of my dog after he's ruined my sex life.
Dude, I'm going to tell you, I read that. I saw, oh my God, I laughed so hard. Because he had to look at everything. Folks, I don't want to just go to his Instagram. You'll see it. His dog is adorable. It is adorable. It's funny as hell. And, of course, I am Elliott Serrano. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram. Find me on Facebook. And here on the Facebook page, on the Shaken Not Heard Facebook page, the giveaway, real quick. For those of you, if you decided, because of us talking about Casino Royale 1967, if you decided that you wanted to watch it so that you could be ready for tonight's show, and I feel personally responsible for that, okay? Email me at shakennotheard@gmail.com. Send me a copy of your digital receipt that you paid money to watch Casino Royale on any of these streaming services. I will send you a digital copy of an Ian Fleming book, which I'm sure you will enjoy infinitely more than this particular movie. So again, shakennotheard@gmail.com. Email me a copy of your digital receipt, and I will email you a digital copy of one of the many Ian Fleming books that I have in our prize giveaway cache. Just as my way of saying I'm sorry and I want to make it up to you.
It's not like you exposed him to herpes, for God's sake. It's a fun movie.
It feels like I exposed them to herpes. Anyway, all right. Thank you, Mark. Thanks so much for coming on board with us tonight and for being with us and talking about this. It's as always, and I do mean this sincerely. It's great to see you. It's fun to see you. I have a tremendous affection for you, and
we've been through a lot together, Elliott.
We have been through a lot, yes. So I'm glad to see you're doing well, feeling well, that you're doing stuff, that you're out there. I'm glad to see that.
Good to see both of you guys too. Thank you very much. Let's do this again. You got to start doing the Flint movies next, maybe, or some of the knockoffs.
I think we're going to do the Kingsman movies, and yeah.
Okay.
About Brandon Panther, as far as on the topic of Peter Sellers.
We could do the Pink Panther movies. I thought we were going to start a whole new show just to do the Pink Panther movies, but maybe we can just do them.
Yeah, there's only like 6 or 7 of those. So
yeah.
You've got all of like late '60s spy adventure TV to go through. You've got a lot you could work with. So count me in whenever you want.
Cool.
Another mutual friend, Brandon Jerwa, said the moment we hit the Austin Power movies, we know we're done. So we'll have to save those to the very end.
He doesn't get to talk.
He doesn't get to talk. All right. For Mark Rahner, for Dave Pino, I'm Elliott Serrano. This has been Shaken Not Heard, the James Bond podcast that no one listens to. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thank you so much for sharing fandom with us. This has been the podcast no one listens to. Be good to each other. Be safe. Be kind. Be well. We'll see you next time.